Rest between sets is by far one of the most misunderstood topics in bodybuilding. And for whatever reason, there's this idea that you should not rest longer than a set period of time. Some guys say that's 60 to 90 seconds, but many will even say it's as little as 30 to 45 seconds. And there's this idea that if you rest longer than, let's say, 2 minutes, you'll begin to cool down. And before I break down this myth and go into the exact details of this video, I just want to say, if you've never had to rest 2 or more minutes between each set, you're probably not training hard enough. But let's talk about exactly why you need to rest first, which will help you understand exactly how long you should be resting between sets. Every time we perform a set in the gym, assuming we're taking that set near failure or to failure, we're recruiting muscle fibers each rep. We're building up lactic acid in the muscles, and as the set goes on and we approach failure, each rep will become more difficult. Each rep will become more painful until we could no longer complete another rep. We then need to take a rest period to allow some of that lactic acid to clear. We need to allow time for our breathing to return to a somewhat normal rate. And we need our mental and physical energy to return back to normal or what it was prior to that set. Of course, as the session builds, so does our fatigue level. But our goal in between each set is to recover as much as we possibly can. Why? So that we can perform the next set with an equally as high degree of effort. We want solid form and technique, but we also want to effectively be able to take that muscle near failure again in the next set. And if we haven't taken enough time to clear that lactic acid from the muscles or for our breathing and our attention to return back to normal, the next set is not going to be nearly as productive as the previous one. If you try doing a set of barbell squats to 10 near failure, and it was truly a hard set done near failure, and then you follow that up with only a 30-second rest period, you might only get 3 to 4 reps on the next set, if you're lucky. And on top of that, each repetition was probably done with extremely poor form, increasing your risk of injury. With that said, as a general rule of thumb, if your main goal during training is to get bigger and stronger, incomplete rest periods are out. But now, let's talk more about complete rest periods. There's no universal length of time that you should take in between each set for a complete rest period, but there are some guidelines. First, take as long as you need for your breathing to recover to near baseline. I say near baseline because it's not a bad thing if your heart rate and breathing are elevated during exercise, but you do not want to go into the next set with your breathing as high as it was when you ended the previous set. You should also take as much time between sets as needed for your muscles to recover in between those sets. You need those muscles to recover enough to perform the next set with a full level of effort. The amount of time for this is completely by feel, but I'll give you some guidelines at the end of this video. You should also allow for enough time for some of that blood and lactic acid to clear to where your range of motion is no longer restricted. You ever had such a massive pump in your quads after a set of squats that you had to sit down or lay down on the floor? You ever had a pump so deep in your arms that you couldn't even bend at the elbows? A pump so deep that your arms hurt and you had to wait to get back full range of motion? If so, you shouldn't be going into your next set like that. You want to make sure that you recover all these systems as much as possible before going into the next set. You want that next set to be as productive as possible. You want to recover your cardiovascular system or your breathing. You want to recover your muscular system or those muscles that you're targeting. And you want to make sure the nervous system's recovered. Let's say you performed a heavy set of RDLs. Maybe after a couple of seconds, your hamstrings might be ready to go. But if that set was extremely taxing, it's no longer just about your hamstrings. Your body's still going to need that extra time to put 100% focus into the next set. And of course, the exact time for all this to happen is completely individual. Guys with greater work capacity will generally recover much quickly in between each set, and the total amount of volume and the intensity level of the workout will be a factor as well. But as a general rule of thumb, you're looking at longer rest periods for bigger, heavier compound movements and shorter rest periods needed for lighter isolation exercises. Bigger compound lifts like benches, squats, and deadlifts, they not only train the target muscle hard, but many other muscle groups. And the sheer weight lifted on those exercises also heavily impacts the nervous system. And if these are done for higher repetitions, there's even more cardiovascular stress. And as a general rule of thumb, you're probably going to want to wait 2 minutes in between sets of heavy compound lifts. And for really heavy sets, it's not uncommon at all to need 3 to 5 minutes rest in between each set. But now, because lighter isolation work, like let's say a preacher curl or a lateral raise, are not so systemically demanding, and really only the fatigue done is on the target muscle, there's not as much need for long rest periods in between those sets. And you can generally get away with 60 to 90 seconds rest, even with very hard sets of bicep curls and lateral raises. But remember, for muscle building and strength gains, you still should wait as long as needed for a complete rest period. And if you're cutting down on rest periods just for the sake of saving time, it's not going to be ideal. And for anyone who likes to train fast or take less rest periods between sets to incorporate more aerobic work or cardio, you have to pick one. Are you training to build strength and muscle, or are you training for cardio? There's a reason that bodybuilders train with weights and then they do additional cardio to burn more calories. Combining them both together purposely is a great way to do each of them ineffectively. So if you're looking to build more muscle and strength, I highly recommend you take as long as you need in between each set, but no longer, as now you're just wasting time in the gym. Once you've recovered all these systems, any additional rest has no additional benefit, and you're just making your gym sessions longer as a whole. And if you want the exact programs that I recommend to build more muscle using proven old school bodybuilding methods, check out my 5-day mass gain program down below. And as always, if you guys want to see more of the best original bodybuilding content just like this, make sure to hit subscribe.